to the 80/20 Baseball Podcast. Strike! The 80/20 Coaching Masterclass, our weekly get-together where coaches go from new to good and good to great. Mastering the fundamentals and the art of coaching.
Welcome, coaches. Coach Bo here with you. I am pumped up to bring an interview that I think is loaded with good, useful information. Today, we'll do part one of the interview with Coach Adam Sarancik. Coach Sarancik has been a coach for over 40 years. He has written 4 books on coaching youth baseball. He regularly writes articles for the biggest publications in the coaching world, the baseball coaching world. His books are recommended by the American Baseball Coaches Association, Collegiate Baseball News, and you can find those on his website, coachingchampionsforlife.com, coachingchampionsforlife.com. Those 4 books are Coaching Champions for Life, The Process of Mentoring the Person, Athlete, and Player. The next book is Teacher, Role Model, Mentor, Lessons Learned from a Lifetime in Coaching. Book number 3 is Takeaway Quotes from Coaching Champions for Life. And the 4th book, A Ground Ball to Shortstop, How and Why Coaches See Their Game Differently Than Anyone Else. Coach Sarancik is trying to give back to the youth baseball community. So we have some new topics to cover in this interview. The topic is going to be the time between innings. We're really going to focus and dive into that time between innings, those lost opportunities for teams to get better and get more reps, quality reps. We're going to talk about a ton of different examples of how we can utilize the time in between innings, also how we can get the most out of our bench players, and our game bullpen session. So our game day bullpen sessions, there will be a lot of tips shared out in today's episode to help us maximize all this time that is typically considered downtime, but is a great opportunity if utilized correctly, which it should be, to get a ton of work in, a ton of quality reps in throughout the entire season. It also makes everything more fun for the players. It keeps them active and focused. So the topics today are going to be how pitchers and catchers, how infielders, how outfielders, how hitters, and how bench players can maximize the downtime between inning time. So we're going to dive right into part 1 today. Part 2 of the interview will come next week. It's a 2-part interview. Next week's topic will be focused on how we as coaches can specifically coach up the mental game with our players. That'll be next week's topic. But first, let's dive in to part 1 with Coach Sarancik. All right, I am excited to be here with Coach Adam Sarancik. Coach Sarancik, how are you doing?
I'm good, Coach Bo. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to doing this again with you.
I always look forward to having you on the podcast. We're discussing right before we went to record. This is your passion to help coaches of all levels, but to really help coaches and especially newer coaches and younger coaches. You're looking to pass on this lifetime of wisdom that you have. And that's just awesome. Music to my ears. You're coming on here and taking the time. And you said, hey, Coach Bo, I got as much time as you need because I want to help give back. And so I just want the listeners to hear that and where you're coming from. So we got a couple topics today. We're going to first start with between innings, the lost opportunities for the team. And this is a lot of time. If you do the math, between innings, there's a lot of time that can be utilized there. So Coach Sarancik, you're going to break that down for us. Pitchers and catchers, and then infielders, and then outfielders, and then hitters, and even bench players. So I'm excited for you to break down those 5 areas so we can be better coaches and maximize our time with our players. We'll start with that first topic, and I'll let you run with it, Adam, and then maybe after each section, we'll break it down and go from there.
That's great. Thanks so much. First, I want to again always take time to thank the coaches and the audience for taking their time to listen and to be better. We have a tremendous impact on the people we coach and the people that are trying to do the best that they can do in all aspects of youth and high school baseball, for example. We can't thank them enough for the time that they put in. It is a tremendous amount of time and effort to do it and do it well. So if they're listening to your podcast, they're getting a lot of great content, but they're also showing an extra level of commitment and passion for helping the people that they're working with day to day. So thank you for everything you guys do. Yes, the first one, between innings. So I was surprised in one way with the amount of forward thinking and people trying to be the best that they can be, the amount of copying that goes on. It's kind of like, well, this is what we did between innings. This is what I see other coaches do between innings. And not a lot of thought is given to why are we doing what we're doing? Is this the best that we can do? Can we do better between innings in every way? Or are we out here just to play games and hopefully win a game? So I think a paradigm shift has to occur, first of all, in a couple of ways. We're trying to do more than just win games. Of course, that's what we want to do. We want to win games, we want to win championships, but we want to develop these players, right? We want to maximize every opportunity that we can to make them better people, athletes, and players. That's my philosophy, as you know, Coach. And so the other thing that goes on is we're playing so many games, all right? We're loading up the schedule with a league schedule, with a tournament schedule. We're playing many times more games than we are practices once we get into, quote unquote, the actual season. So if we're not maximizing every opportunity to develop during those games, if we're just treating games as like, okay, who are we playing today, regardless of how good they are, we just want to win, we're losing a lot of opportunity to help our players. So that's kind of the motivation for this topic and the article that I wrote. You find that, Coach, that teams are out there just playing and hoping to win, and if guys are getting hits and we're making plays, everything's good, and we're really not looking at it from the perspective of, are we still getting better? My whole philosophy is you're trying to beat your best competition every day, whether you're playing them or not. Could we have beat our best competition today? Are these players going to be at the end of the season much better in throwing, fielding, and hitting than they were at the beginning of the season? Or are we going to end up with a 22-3 record and say, wow, we were great this year? You may not have been very good at all. You just played relatively average, maybe even weak competition. Okay. What's your experience in that regard?
100% with that. You know what really stands out about what you just mentioned there is that paradigm of looking to improve and not just getting stagnant or complacent with what we know, because this is what we've always done. But I loved how you said, is there a better way to do whatever it is we're talking about? And like in this case, between innings, is there a better way to make between innings more productive? And I really like how you're saying that. And I'll add this one other thing that I know we've talked about a little bit before, Coach. These little things, these little parts of the game as a coach, this is what makes the game a lot more fun for a coach. And the game should be fun. We should enjoy being a coach, but finding these little details that we can improve, like the between innings time, how can we make that productive? What can we do with our outfielders, our infielders, our catchers, our pitchers, our bench? It's this constant, like looking to iterate and improve that I find it just fills the time with more fun in that we're trying to strategize and just really passes the time and makes it much more enjoyable as a coach.
You know, Coach, when you do things as long as you and I have, what you learn is the players don't remember as much the wins and losses as they do what you taught them. Players really enjoy learning, okay? John Wooden used to have very few problems with discipline because he was a master teacher. So if you're constantly teaching something to these players, they're constantly having fun because they're getting better and their self-esteem and the way they feel about themselves is growing every day. And one of my favorite topics after a game is not how we could have played better to win the game or throw, field, and hit better. I just ask the players, how do you feel you've got better today as a person, as an athlete, as a player? What are you going to take away positively from today to help you be a better son, better student, better athlete, or whatever? And reflect a little deeper on that. And if they're learning throughout the day, it's like, wow, I really felt better turning double plays today. Did you turn a double play in the game? No. But between innings we worked on it, actually felt like I got better today. Yeah, okay. And oh, by the way, when college scouts come to see you, they may not ever see you make a play in the game that they need to evaluate. It's maybe between innings when they're going to see a catcher throw from home to first and judges transfer time and pop time. They may never return a double play in the game, but the fact that you ran it between innings and he can watch the way you field the ball, transfer the ball, threw the ball, receive the ball, etc., that may be the only time they get to see it. So you better show it off, right? So there's so many opportunities that exist out here during the game that I just don't think we're taking advantage of, because the coaches are there like, well, gosh, I hope we pitch and catch well today so we can win. I just think it needs to be deeper than that. All right, so let's talk about pitchers and catchers while we're alluding to that. And let's just start in the bullpen and some of the things that I see go on down there that I kind of scratch my head at. And this is not just youth ball, this is high school ball too. And some of these things we're talking about, Coach, I see it at the high school level too. But first of all, recruit enough help and enough knowledgeable help so you can coach at all times. I know it's very common today to have a coach that is concerned with pitchers and catchers in the game and maybe the infield and stuff, but I'd be shocked at how little attention the outfielders get, for example. And then when we go down to the bullpen, sometimes I see pitchers and catchers go down there by themselves, and there's no coach there at all. And then if there is a coach there, it's all about the pitcher. Well, wait a minute, you got a catcher there too. How about we continue to develop the catcher? Let's work with both the pitchers and the catchers. My approach is we start out with the pitcher throwing from the stretch, and then with the windup at the end, because that's at least the beginning of the game, what he's going to go into the game throwing from, the windup. So if you're throwing out of the stretch, how about we have the catcher work on his throwing position, his runners on position, his transfer mechanics after every pitch, so that he's actually working on his footwork, getting ready to throw to bases. Okay, so in the windup, how about we have the catcher work on his receiving skills as well, but coach these things. You can get better every single day, not just the pitcher and his mechanics, but the catcher too. And then some of the stuff is just basic. We're not even set up for success. I sometimes don't see any measurement that we're throwing from the same distance that we're going to throw in the game, that the mound we're throwing on is, I know in youth baseball this isn't realistic, but there's no excuse for this in high school. The mound should be exactly the same in the bullpen as it is on the field. You should be throwing from the same mound, right? I'll just relay a quick story. When the Mariners, we used to have a AAA team here in Portland, and the Mariners used to play one preseason game a year. The Mariners used to send their grounds crew to the Portland Stadium the week before the game. That mound had to be 1/32nd of an inch laser graded to the same exact slope and grade as the mound that these pitchers for the Mariners pitched on at Safeco. All right, that's how serious they took it. Now, I'm not saying it has to be the same, but there's no excuse for having this beat up, cruddy mound thrown in a different direction. By the way, you should be throwing in the bullpen the same direction that you're throwing in the game, so that the sun is the same, the wind is the same, etc., etc. But let's get everybody set up for success so that everything that you are doing in the bullpen is going to be the same as it is in the game. And then finally, we have to remember how vulnerable these kids are with their arms. These are growing young people, right? Youth people, high school people, whatever. Guess what? They play shortstop, they play center field, they've thrown the ball I don't know how many hundred times in practice, and now you're going to go in the bullpen, put them on a mound, and throw more. The problem is, while we have a lot of guidelines for pitch counts, nobody's keeping track of the rest of the throws that these kids are making from shortstop, from center field. I remember last year, 2 of the top teams in the Little League World Series, 3 of their pitchers couldn't finish the tournament because they had arm injuries. And these are 12-year-olds. They couldn't even finish the tournament just for that reason. They were complying with all the pitch counts throughout the tournament in the summer, but no one was monitoring the number of throws they made in the bullpen and other positions during practice, and these kids are vulnerable. We have to monitor at all times what they're throwing, how much they're throwing. You may need more in the bullpen on a cold day. You may need less. You may not need your full 6 pitches between innings to warm up. You may need less, okay? But we have to monitor at all times what we're doing with these kids and how we're taking care of their arms. And then mentally, I don't think, especially at the high school level, we do enough. We have books on hitting for the other team, spray charts or whatever. We should have books on umpires too. And if you're coming in the middle of the game, you should know, what's this umpire zone? As you and I know, Coach, there's a strike zone and there's the umpire zone. Almost every game, an umpire, maybe by the way they set up properly or improperly, will give you a little more inside or outside or up or down. It's really good to know that going in as a pitcher, that I can take advantage of that. Same thing with the team that we're playing. This team loves to play the small ball game. They love to bunt. They love to hit and run. Well, it's good to know that because after I deliver the pitch, I become a defender. I'm one of the 9 defensive players. So how are they going to attack us on defense? So we can get real sophisticated in what goes on. All this stuff can go on in the bullpen. So to recap, we coach catchers as well as pitchers. We set ourselves up for success by making sure that everything we're doing down there is exactly the same as going to be done in the game. We're monitoring the health of the player's arms, knowing not just the pitch count, but how much this person is thrown, how much they may need in the bullpen or may not need. We don't want to leave our best stuff there. So many times pitchers throw way too much in the bullpen, leave their best stuff there. And then tactically, strategically, how are we going to attack the hitters that are coming up and how are they going to attack us on offense? So that's my summary on pitchers and catchers.
One thing that I like to give a tip to coaches is an actionable way to better handle this is I tell coaches, find a minimal pitch number, like your average pitcher probably needs to be sufficiently warmed up and properly warmed up in the bullpen. And then also find a cap, give them a cap and give them a range. What I've used in the past, which works, I say, pitchers, you probably need at least on an average day, there's temperature. It's depending on if the kids played shortstop all game or catcher, but typically about 15 pitches to dial in, get their pitches in. If I go 15 to I cap it at about 25 for lower levels, 30 for high school. So I say you should throw at least 15, no more than 25 or 30. And so now I also like them to come up with their own number and then try to follow a script. So each kid has their own kind of bullpen script. I like them to write it out. I like them so they have it and they memorize it and they practice it. So then they know. There are some differences between like a warm weather or if it's the 7th inning or if it's the 3rd game of a triple header. Of course, there are some caveats, but I do like that because that gives them a number instead of just going down there willy-nilly. I threw 3 pitches, I'm ready. Well, they're not. They're probably ready. Maybe their arm is ready because they played it. It's a doubleheader. It's 105 degrees, but their pitches aren't ready. Their mechanics aren't ready. Their stretch, their delivery, their windup, it's not dialed in. So I like to give them 15 to 25 for the youth level. That's the window. I say pick a number in there or just go down there. And if you're at 15, you feel good. At 20, feel good, but max 25. And I like to have a coach down there. Like you said, a coach counting. If I don't have a coach, I have the catcher count. That's how I like to keep track of those numbers because we can tell them to go down there, but then how is the system implemented? And that right there works as a kind of a good broad guideline. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you said a number of things there that prompt some thoughts on my part. Number one of the things I neglected is make sure your pitcher's ready to pitch. If you don't have an arm care routine that they've done before they started throwing in their throwing or receiving portion of warm-up, from the time they should have something they're doing, even arm circles and figure eights and that kind of thing from the time they start playing baseball. But by the time they're 11, 12 years old, they should have a J-band routine or some kind of elastic band routine that they're doing to prep their arms and shoulders. All right, so let's make sure that they're ready to throw. Secondly, you don't always have to throw the baseball to see a mechanical problem. Sometimes I'll have them do some dry mechanics for me from the delivery, from the stretch, and from the windup just to see mechanically. I really, really, really emphasize this to coaches. You have to look at your player and see the athlete. The problems, the faults and fixes for any player at any position start from the ground up, and they start with the athlete first. Okay, so you can look at a player, go through a dry mechanic delivery, and look from the ground up and see, he's striding across his line. We're going to have trouble with our control because he's striding across his line. And if you don't have a ball in his hand and he's not throwing right away, you can see that. Too many coaches look at the result of the pitch, whether it's a strike or a ball, and they're really not analyzing the mechanics from the ground up. And you can also see, I can anyway, maybe because I've done it for so long, I can see tightness in the hips. I can see this motion is not as fluid as what this person normally is. We got to stop right here and get this person ready to throw. And I love your word system, Coach. I mean, there should be a system. There should be a routine. If a player is properly prepared to pitch in every way, you shouldn't need more than 2-3 fastballs, 2-3 changeups, 2-3 breaking balls from the stretch and the windup to be ready. And you may not even need that, but I don't think you need more than that to get ready. If you don't, then the coaches didn't do their coaching well enough in practice to get you ready to pitch, okay? And more than that's probably not going to help. It's just going to cause you to either continue making mistakes that you're already making, or it's something that needs to be handled in a coaching aspect. I think most importantly, though, this is an individual thing. It is something, even in your throwing and receiving part, that there isn't a certain number of throws that we should make to get ready. It's always, especially for a pitcher, how do you feel on a given day? You may feel great. This may be the first game of a doubleheader, but it may be the second game or the last game of a tournament. If it's the last game of the tournament, this has been a 100-degree, 6, 7, 8 game tournament, and don't get me started on that, you may not need much at all, to get ready. It's like go time here. So I don't like to have any set system, but I do love the word system. I do love routine, and I do like limits. Okay, there's no reason you should do more than 3 pitches per type of pitch, per stretch, per windup. You shouldn't need more than that. Okay. All right, let's go on to infielders. Oh my word. This is the one that is copied the most, and I just can't figure out why we're not working harder to do better with our infielders. Basically, a first baseman takes a ball out and just throws ground balls to the infielders between innings, and they field it and throw it back. And, if it's accurate, it's accurate. If it's not, it's not. And they're all the same type of ball, and they're all fielded at the person. There's no forehands, there's no backhands, different type hops. There's no variation in speed. You got 5 things you have to account for in every type of ground ball, and we don't do that, between innings. And I don't know why we don't do that. So I think the system, I love your word system, coach. Let's do what they do in college and pro ball. Let's start our players as deep as possible to have them make the deepest possible throw in the first inning, right? And then work our way in from there. And every inning, let's work on at you, forehand, backhand, right? Drop step, forehand, drop step, backhand. Let's work on all of the different types of balls that we're going to get in the game and all of the footwork that goes along with it. And then between innings also, let's work on force plays at second base. Let's work on double plays. And the coaches should be watching, and we should work on it with the same level of intensity that we are going to have to perform it in the game. Is there any wonder why in the last inning of the game we're not making the throw under pressure? Because for the first time, we're using that same intensity in the game that we haven't been doing between innings. So again, you're only going to have a chance to make 2 throws maybe between innings from your position, but let's use the same level of intensity. Let's work on forces at second. Let's work on double plays. Let's work on balls to our left, balls to our right, different depths. And then with regard to the first baseman, I'm just shocked. Well, at the youth level, we're spending our time chasing the ball that was not thrown accurately. So let's get another ball and put it in a pocket or put it behind the base so we're not spending time chasing balls. And I'm so amazed at how casual the first base mechanics are over there. Every ball needs to be caught. No excuses. We're expecting the bad throw at all times. It needs to be caught. And you need to touch up on every throw. You need to touch the base and do it right. Don't get crushed by the runner. Make sure that you're, on the fair side of the bag at all times. But if you need to go get the ball, go get the ball, just like you're going to get it in the game. And you need to start your throws off the base. Okay, we don't straddle the base or out in front of the base. Start it off the base. You'll get a better angle to throw from, and you'll be able to get different angles on the throws. But after start 5-6 feet off the base, make the throw, and have to travel to the base and work on your footwork while you're receiving the throw. Okay, give them a moving target to throw to. It's the same thing with infielders. I'm shocked at the number of second baseman and shortstop to take a throw from a catcher between innings, and they're standing at the bag. Well, you're not standing at the bag most of the time when the catcher's having to make the throw from home plate for second on a steal. You're moving to the bag. So why are we standing at the bag between innings? Move to the bag. Give them the same type of dynamic between innings that you're going to get in the game. So the first baseman has to be able to throw all these different types of balls, different speed, distance, direction, height, hops, all this stuff. They've got to move from off the bag to the bag. They need to catch every ball and make a play like they're going to have to in the game. And oh, by the way, a little subtle thing that can be worked on even at the high school level is you're not just, here's an umpire tip. Umpires are rhythm people. When you're making a tag, it's tag, show, ready to throw in a one smooth rhythm. Okay, you keep an umpire in your rhythm and his or her rhythm. And I love that we can say her now that we finally have a woman that's umpired a major league game. That's awesome. If you can keep that umpire in his or her rhythm on a close play, you're gonna get the call. The same thing at first base. If for 5 or 6 innings you've caught the ball and planted yourself on the bag with your throwing side foot and looked at the umpire for out or safe, and now in the last inning, you're going to catch it and come off in a timing manner, you're not going to get that call. That umpire, especially at the youth level, is probably going to think you pulled your foot. But if for 6 innings or 7 innings, whatever, you've caught the ball and every time you've felt the ball in your glove and pushed off the base immediately, then in that last inning or along the way when you need a call from the umpire, out or safe, you're going to get the call because you've done it exactly the same way for every ball you've caught. And they watch you between innings too. They're paying attention to what you're doing between innings. You may not know that, but they're paying attention. So if you do it exactly the same way and you need that close call toward the end of the game, that's when you're going to get it. Well, that needs to be worked on and coached between innings. All these little footwork things, all these little variances that we don't see between innings that, again, if we're going to play 50 games, how many opportunities are we losing to get better here? Because we're not working on it. All we're doing is rolling a ball to somebody and having them throw it back to us. That's okay at 7 or 8 years old. After that, it's not okay anymore.
For listeners, I recommend taking a few of each of those recommendations for each aspect of that, say, infield that we just talked about, or for all of these parts, the pitchers, the bullpens, the catcher bullpen, and we're getting into outfielders and hitters and bench players next. So take one or two of those things and implement that, or just one thing and implement that into the next game. Like, I want to see this from first baseman. I want to see this type of, I want to see a backhand, a forehand. I want to see depth. Pick one of those things, and then each game add a little bit of complexity. That's my recommendation for youth coaches. Now, another thing is I would practice this pre-inning or this between-inning routine. I would practice this routine with infielders, and then you have your outfield routine. I would practice this in practice if needed. Do it before your game. It's always good, just like your pregame routine should not be done for the first time at your first game. It should be done before. It should be rehearsed. The pregame routine you do with your infield, outfield should be rehearsed. I know in youth baseball, there's not a lot of time. So one time would be a lot better than 0 times. But if you can do it twice, you're also repping baseball skills and drills. So it works to get your players better at the game anyways. I would practice this a little bit for it, and it could just be like 5 or 10 minutes in the practice before the first game or the next game. And so you can see it and talk about it and maybe stop and say, hey, first baseman, I need the throws to be, we're going to go backhand for the first throws all the way around. I need a depth. I need first baseman. I need you to treat that more game-like, etc. And then also during the game, like Coach Sarancik said, try to have a coaching staff of more than just 1 or 2 coaches. And if you can't get that second, third, or fourth coach, or maybe it's you, to watch certain parts of this pre-inning routine and help coach that up. So you may have, all right, this coach is going to watch the pitcher and the catcher. This coach is going to work with the bench and the outfielders. And this coach is going to keep an eye on that infield and first base routine. So those are some tips to implement Coach Sarancik's wonderful suggestions that he just broke down and gave tons of examples of exactly what we can do to get our teams better.
Yeah, I love that, Coach. I really do. It's a great point that really needs to be practiced at practice so that they understand that, you know what, we're going to maximize every minute that we're out there. We're going to get you better every minute you're out there. Okay. It's just not all about how many runs we score and how many runs they score. It's getting you better. And so we're going to coach you up every minute. And that definitely does need practice. This maybe is another podcast, another thing that maybe I'll come back and talk about. One of the things, my hot topics recently are pregame routines, both for infielders and outfielders. Oh my word, this is just not good, people. Again, we're not getting ready. We're not getting them ready to play in the game. We're just putting people in lines and hitting balls to them. And so much more needs to be done than just putting players in a line. First of all, coaches, if you have a line, you've got a design problem in your routine. All right. You should not have lines. You should have stations, even in pregame warm-up, and putting infielders in a line and hitting ground balls to them, putting outfielders in line, hitting fly balls to them, just should be, we can do a lot better. Another topic for another day, Coach. Let's go to outfielders. So, youth outfielders are not as developed and capable of maybe doing some of the things. So you have to have, I used to be, myself or a coach, we used to go out there and throw balls to them if they couldn't, because this idea of just playing catch, I think if I had to get one tip, Coach, or one thing that I just really encourage coaches to get away from is catching the ball is, like I say, it's just not enough. It's okay at 7 or 8 year olds. After that, we need to be working on more than that. And we need to be working on it between innings as well as at practice. Okay. Between innings is practice. It is. That's what you have to think about. It's practice. So we need to get better. So having outfielders go out there and play catch with one another is not getting them better. Again, if we're not throwing balls left, right, if they're not working on lateral steps, drop steps, wrong way turns, balls in the sun, balls at the fence, etc., we're not getting them ready to play. Do or die fly balls, do or die ground balls, the same type of variations that we're requiring from our infielders, we need to be doing with our outfielders. Just playing catches is not enough. It's just not enough. We could be working on so many more things out there. I don't know why we insist on playing catch with 2 players. How about, again, the coach get out there and we put 3 players out there, and again, we're working on priority, shadowing, all these other dynamics that are going to have to go on as well. You may put them one direction to start the game, and you may put them another direction where they're having to field balls in the sun in a different direction. Next inning, you may put them at the wall and working on wall mechanics, whether it's fielding a ball at the wall and going to the correct side of the ball if the ball's at the wall. Hopefully you've scouted the field and you know all the sprinkler heads, you know the width of the warning track, you know the type of rebound you're going to get off the wall. All these little things are preparing them to win tournaments, to do, better at the next level. To just say, well, I hope that this happens in the game so that when we get to the championship game or we get to the tournament games or when they get to high school, they will have learned it. That's not enough, all right? In youth ball in particular nowadays, there are outfielders that never even get a ball hit to them, right? So how are they getting developed? One of the things that I tell parents at the, or league boards when I go speak to league boards is go and count the number of baseball plays every player had to make in a given game. How many fly balls, ground balls did your outfielders actually get? How many relays did they have the opportunity to do in the entire game? Sometimes none, many times none, maybe one. So where are they learning this? And you say, well, they should be learning it at practice. Really? When we're playing 50 games? How many practices are we really getting in? All right. And why not continue to work on it between innings? Why not? Let's get them better every game. Let's continue to work on how do we field a do or die ground ball? How do we field a do or die fly ball? How do we field a ball in the sun? How do we make a wrong way turn if it's to either side of us? There's a different way of fielding a wrong way turn going lateral or in a narrow 3-foot tunnel at you than there is something deep over your head. It's a different footwork. Well, when are we working on that? And just because you worked on it once doesn't mean they've mastered it. 20 times 5 is greater than 100 times 1. Okay, so again, I don't think we're looking at the development of these outfielders and saying, what am I expecting them to be able to do during these games? And am I developing these players so that they're getting better at it? Just because they caught the ball or missed the ball, that's just not enough. It's just not enough.
I like your suggestion of getting a coach involved in the outfield between inning routine. I really like that. You can scale the reps, you can make them more game-like, and it's just a really good idea on a lot of levels.
Hitters, we can keep this one pretty short. Bottom line is every experienced coach knows that your at-bat starts in the dugout. If you're not ready to go by the time you reach the on-deck circle with knowing what you need to know about this pitcher, if you haven't kind of glanced over in the bullpen when that pitcher's warmed up to see already his velocity, the spin axis of his curveball, the type of curveball he has, you're really short-sighting yourself. You shouldn't be shocked or unaware of the spin axis of that pitcher's curveball when you're facing it for the first time up to bat. You should already know he's got a 12-6 or he's got more of a slider, slurve, whatever. You should already know that, okay? You should know, does this pitcher got a quick delivery or if he's a little bit slower in the delivery so that you can mentally start preparing yourself to load, stride, get your timing in sync long before you get up to bat, okay? Maybe most youth hitters do it in the on-deck circle, but you need to be thinking along with this pitcher's pitches, this pitcher's what we call tells and tendencies. Does he tip when he's going to throw a fastball or a curveball? What are his tendencies? What are his out pitches? Okay, does he always throw the breaking ball with 2 strikes? Does he ever pitch backwards, throwing the breaking ball first? All this kind of stuff, not only in your mind, but should be discussed on the bench among everybody. Hey, this guy always throws a curveball 2 strikes. He never throws a curveball first pitch. His out pitch is always this pitch, his curveball, his changeup, his fastball, whatever. We need to know that before we're going up to bat. Everybody needs to be talking about it Everybody needs to be locked in from the time that they're on the bench. And then as you're going to the on deck circle and in the on deck circle, you need to be thinking about what's likely to be my job. We got a close game here, tough pitcher. You got nobody out. If the guy before me gets on, I'm probably going to have to bunt. Get him over to second base. This one run could be the difference in the game. So I better be thinking bunt mechanics here, because my job is likely to be getting this runner over. Or if he's at second, nobody out, I got to hit behind the runner so I can get him over to third base. That's my job. Okay, so I've got to think about these things before I ever go up to bat. I'm not waiting to learn my job when I step in the batter's box and take a look down at the third base coach and see what my sign is. I should already be thinking about what my job's going to be before I ever get there. So I think a lot of things could be proactively done from a hitter's point of view long before they even get to the on-deck circle. And so this really helps to have, these are all jobs of my bench coach. Okay, my bench coach makes sure that these things are being discussed, not just, at the youth level, we're just, a lot of times the bench coach is just keeping discipline, making sure that people are getting in and out of the dugout quickly, making sure that they're not fooling around, that they're focused on the game. Again, at 7, 8, maybe 9 years old, that's fine. Okay, that's just like catching the ball. At that age, that's what they need to learn how to do. Make sure that their equipment's ready to go. Make sure everything's out. Make sure that there's not thrown on the ground. Make sure it's organized. At the very young level, that's great. Starting about age 10, that's not good enough anymore. We need to be getting them ready for tournament play, higher level play. We need to get them to think ahead and to know that baseball is a game of proactivity. We need to be proactive to be successful. That's how we're going to set ourselves apart. And my bench coaches do that. Like you said, we've already practiced being organized and focused and whatever in practice. Now we're in the game. My bench coach is saying, hey, what's this pitcher's out pitch? Okay, what type of curveball does this pitcher have? What's his pick move like? When does he do this? All the tells, tendencies. What's your job likely to be here? You're coming up to bat. Coach is probably giving you the bunt sign. All right, you need to know that. So these are the little things that I, again, think between innings and even during the innings that I think could be done a better job with.
Getting the timing down as a hitter. Also, like you said, knowing if there's a bunt situation or maybe it's time to do a drag bunt. You notice that third baseman and you're watching between innings, your third baseman sluggish. He's not quick. He's slow. And you noticed in previous innings, he plays deep. How about you time up your late show bunt? You can time it up with the real pitcher on the mound doing the warm-up pitches, because the timing of the drag bunt, how early you show or how late you can show, is almost as big a deal as where the ball goes. And then how about noticing the outfielders? That left fielder has no arm. Okay, when I hit a base hit to left field, I'm looking for two. Just knowing not so much the infielders, but outfielders, if they got a weak arm, you're thinking double on a lot of maybe a certain outfielder or maybe the whole lot. Another thing, you say to yourself, hey, what is this umpire's strike zone before you get up there? And now I will say this, I don't think the strike zone should matter. In my opinion, it should not matter with less than 2 strikes. You're swinging at pitches you can hit for line drives. You're not just up there protecting the strike zone. You're looking at hitters' pitches that are in your hitting zone, which could be a big area. But you're looking for balls you can hit hard one-hoppers through the infield, line drives, or balls to the gap. But you should know what their strike zone is before you get in there, because when you do, and you will get 2 strikes a lot, all right, this umpire, you're not like trying to figure it out on the fly. All right, this umpire calls everything low, or they call things up high. Okay, when you get to 2 strikes, now you're ready for this. So just doing 1, 2, or 3, or 4 of those things before you even get up there into the box can be really advantageous, especially when you get to that 12, 13, 14-year-old level and you're about ready to go to high school.
Yeah, those are great points. I love the idea of knowing the umpire zone too. Yeah, and that should be communicated by the players coming back. Somebody strikes out on a borderline pitch, that player needs to come back and tell the other hitters, hey, this guy's, and the pitcher's going to take that with him to the mound too. But hey, this umpire, he's calling him inside, he's calling him outside with 2 strikes. Just be aware of it. And I would just expand. I love your thing. Less than 2 strikes. You're hitting pitches in your zone. I would just modify that a little bit to say your zone to do your job. Again, at the highest levels, my zone may not be that outer third. I may not handle that very well, but you know what? If I have a runner at second base, I need to get him to third. I'll pepper a ball to the second baseman on an outer third, even with less than 2 strikes, because that's my job. I need to get the runner over. Okay. So yeah, I absolutely love those things. Absolutely love them. And then finally, let's talk about bench players. And we got into it a little bit when I talked about hitting, but I think let's just expand on it just a little bit more. Again, at 7, 8, 9, it's okay just to stay in the game, cheer on your teammates, be enthusiastic, make sure you're ready to, go into play or get up to bat when it's your turn. After that, we need to do more than that. I hope all coaches have a lineup for the entire game so you know what position you're going into next when you're on the bench. You need to be thinking along and communicating with your bench coach about the situation for that position. If I'm going into center field, I have a runner at second base, at the youth level, the coach is talking to you. Okay, ball's hit to you in the air, where are you going to it if you catch it? If it's on the ground at you, where are you going? If it's on the ground in a gap, and oh, by the way, it's different many times. People always think, well, if the ball's hit to me, what am I doing with it? Well, guess what? If it's on the ground versus in the air, it's different. And if it's at you or in the gap, it's different. Bottom line is the coach, the bench coach, is communicating with you when you're on the bench. So you're thinking along with your position when you're not in the game. And you're holding everybody else accountable too. All right. So if I'm going in the center field, the guy next to me on the bench is going in the right field, you're talking about who's our relay man here. We got to make sure that we're shadowing each other on every ball hit. We've got to make sure we're calling priority. We're talking the game between, or, while we're on the bench. And the team's tactics, the other team's tactics too. Okay, they may likely bunt here. Okay, what are we doing? Et cetera, et cetera. So all that kind of strategies are going to be talked to. But one of the little lost opportunities, maybe we'll end on this, that I think, kids today are into tech from the time maybe before they can even talk, they're on their iPads, right? Why are we having coaches and parents keep stats? Why can't the players keep the stats to keep their mind in the game? Why aren't they on the iPad keeping the stat? They would love that. Just have them. And again, we don't want a crowd. We don't want a 4 or 5. But every inning, maybe use that as a reward for somebody that has shown what, as a person, athlete, player, what you want them to do. Say, you did so well in pregame warmups today. When you're on the bench in the first inning, you get to keep stats. Oh, sweet. It's like, yeah, let's go. I don't know, just an opportunity. I see so many parents do it. I see coaches do it. And yet players from a very early age, even in youth ball, they can keep stats and they would love to do it and think it's a lot of fun. And it would keep their mind in the game too.
100%. I'll tell you what, one of my first baseball stories that my mom liked to share was 1986. I was 5 and at a Dodger game, and I kept score the entire game with the old school scorebook. And there's a lot of listeners that kept score when they were younger with the old school scorebook, and I loved it. And you know what? I stayed engaged the whole time, and I got really good. And you know what? You start learning a lot more about the game. It just makes the game more fun and less boring. And I love that idea of rewarding a kid for doing something that you've outlined as something a good behavior or something they've done well. Then you reward them with letting them get on the iPad and keep score, especially those 3 or 4 kids that probably really want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're just some of the things that go out and watch so many youth and high school games, and I'm just shaking my head saying, gosh, they're playing so many games and they're missing so many opportunities for team and player development here when we're not actually involved in the game itself. There's just so many lost opportunities.
Yeah, I will add one thing, that one of the best times to coach your players, I'm not a big fan of coaching the players on the field during the
No,
game, especially for like the older levels. I mean, maybe if they have no clue what they're doing and it's 7 years old and they've never played, maybe you got to
yeah,
intervene to just. But I
yeah,
love coaching up the bench players during the game when
yeah,
our team's on defense. Not so much hitting because they're usually involved with cheering, but when they're on defense, you go, you have a right fielder next to you, and there's a guy on first, a runner on first base, and you say, hey, ball hit over your head, where are you likely going? And you want quickness, or you look at him, hey, what's the count? Real quick, Joey, what's the count? And they should quickly be able to tell you 2-1, coach. Hey, how many out are there? 2. So it keeps them in the game. It keeps them paying attention. And you can ask them, and you can get more sophisticated. Like I said, you could use the example of, hey, ball hit in the gap that you turn your back on and have to go get. Where are you likely throwing it if the bases are loaded? My point is, for that given situation, if there is, hey, do you think the runner's going to go here? Hey, Tommy, do you think this runner, does he look like he's going to go? Does he showing some tendencies and tells? Is he looking like he's going to, let's see, is his lead a little bigger? So you kind of just get them involved by coaching them up, because they're just sitting there on the bench. So their brain can be utilized because they're not really doing anything with their body.
Let me add just one other thing real quickly here while I'm thinking of it. Ideally, I'd like to have 4 coaches if I can. I want to coach working with pitchers and catchers in the game, watching that. I want 1 for infielders, I want 1 for outfielders, and I want 1 on the bench. I am shocked at how coaches allow their players to play the same place for every hitter, especially outfielders. The outfielders never move. It doesn't matter if it's the number 4 hitter or the number 9 hitter. They're still in the same spot. They might get moved once a game or twice a game. And yet we know they should be moving constantly based on the hitter, the situation, who our pitcher is, et cetera, et cetera. And if you had an outfielders coach that was constantly communicating with them, it would save you a lot of runs and cause you to win so many more games. I'm shocked at how pitchers and players, infielders, outfielders, don't even know who's coming up. As an old center fielder, I wanted to know who's the first guy up. If it's number 3, meaning I've got 3, 4, 5 coming up, I already know where I'm playing out there. But they have no idea who's coming up and what in the order they are and how that might dictate where I need to play. But yeah, there's nobody, for example, in youth baseball that consistently is communicating with, and most of the communication needs to be nonverbal, with outfielders. They're playing in the same place for every hitter, and sometimes even infielders. They're not moving in, out, left, right. They're not thinking along with the game. They're just waiting for the ball to be and hoping that it goes well. It's just shocking to me. So I like 4 coaches.
Yeah, you see, at the major league level, it's so important for to position themselves. They all have cue cards in their pockets now.
Yeah.
They all have index cards, and we don't need to go to that level for the youth
Oh, no.
baseball, but definitely get them to think about, and maybe you let the players decide where they want to stand, and don't yell at them if they're in what we think is the wrong spot. But when they come in, ask them, "Hey, why did you shift over there? Or why did you back up for that hitter? Or why were you playing in? Or why did you move to your left?" Anyways, you got me thinking about how to utilize some more of the mental bandwidth to really get these kids playing the game strategically.
Well, and 95 or more percent of all communication during a game should be nonverbal. I mean, everybody knows how to move an outfielder nonverbally, forward, left, right, and back. And so that needs to be practiced and schooled into the players. And nobody wants to be yelled out to. Even between innings, when you're coaching the mechanics and stuff, you shouldn't have to yell anything out. You should already have the ability to communicate footwork, transfers, things like that with your hands. And they should be constantly looking at you, knowing you're looking at them to see that they're doing it right. But with their parents and relatives and friends in the stands, nobody wants to be yelled out during a game for any reason. But you've got to communicate constantly, not during the play or that kind of thing, but before the play, because it's going to get them ready for a higher level. I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of micromanaging that goes on. They're going to have to get used to it. But you're right, Coach. I like letting players play. Absolutely love letting players play and just accept the results. And that's maybe a good segue into our next topic, tips and guidelines for better communication.
All right, that wraps up part 1 of our interview with Coach Sarancik. Just tons of wisdom all around. If you have any follow-up questions about the interview, about some of the topics we covered, don't hesitate to email me, coachbo@8020baseball.com. I'm here to help. I'm here to support. Head over to 8020baseball.com for even more useful information on how to be a great coach. Go to coachingchampionsforlife.com, Adam's website. He's got resources over there. You can contact him through there and check out his books, his 4 books. On one of those books, you'll see a familiar name on the back, a familiar name endorsing it. So it's always great to bring Coach Sarancik on because he loves talking baseball and he loves to give back. And he gave 2 hours of his time, the 2 hours it took to record the whole interview, and just shared out a ton of wisdom, as you heard in part 1. And part 2 next week, we are going to discuss how we as coaches can build up and improve the mental game of all of our players. So that'll come out next Tuesday. And before we leave, I have one small request. The best way to support this podcast and get this positive message out to more coaches is to leave a positive review on your podcast app. This can be done in just a few minutes, especially if you dictate it out, and that would be really appreciated. So we'll be back next week for the second installment of Coach Adam Sarancik's interview. He shares out a plethora of new tips for us coaches to better coach up the mental game with our players. Until then, let's keep taking care of our health so we can be at our best for our families, our close friends, and our teams, our players. And one thing I always like to keep in mind is this knowledge we've acquired today, this wisdom we've heard, it does no good for anybody unless we go out and apply it, put it in, start drip feeding it into your coaching routine. You don't have to put all this stuff in overnight, of course. Start drip feeding it where you feel it best fits. Thank you all for being a coach. That's something to be extremely proud of. I mean that It's one of the best things at the end of the day, at the end of our lives, to be able to hang our hat on. One of the best ways to give back. Thank you for all you're doing. I'm here to support. Y'all take care. Until next week, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Podcast, the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. We got this. Now, let's take the field.